Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. What if Naruto was desperate lover of pervy Artemis, movie? This is going to work, she told herself once more. The plan was simple, on any other enemy, what she had in mind was not going to work. Thankfully the twin giants were not that bright, egos as large as mountains. Failure was not an option here. The consequences were too dire, for herself and for Olympus. What possessed her to come up and follow through with this plan she did not know. However, no one else had a solution. No one else was willing to deal with this problem. Hera was not listening to their demands anymore. The other gods didn't want to fight them for they could not die. So here she was, risking her own maidenhead. No, she thought. She would never have put ahead with this plan if there was even any chance of either of the twin giants touching her. She had thought this through. The plan will work. On the minuscule chance it fails, she was quick, confident in her ability to escape them. The two giants were strong. The gods had tried hard to eliminate them, but none could. Not even her father's master bolt could kill them. They couldn't overpower the prophecy. No god and no man can kill them. But they were neither god nor man, they were giants. And brought upon their own strength and invulnerability. They were an egotistic pair of giants. She would use that against them. Their capture of the god of war had inflated their already large ego to a point where it had become their weakness. She already had a weakness to target, she just needed a way to exploit it. She guessed she could call it luck that Hera refused their demands. The pair of giants had long been demanding both herself and Hera for themselves. Otis wanted her, Ephialtes wanted the queen of the gods. But currently, there were two of them and only one of her. She would use that. She didn't speak when she arrived and saw the pair of giants. Pretending or not, the thought of actually giving herself to them disgusted her. Artemis, Otis said with a smile befitting a pig. Release Ares first, then we will speak. Why give up the god of war for the goddess of the hunt when we can have both? Ephialtes replied. You won't have both of us. I am confident in my ability to leave this place without being captured by you. Do you believe otherwise? She gave a confident and calm reply. Otis frowned and turned to his twin. We can just capture Ares again, brother. Do not believe her words. She will run away as soon as she gets her brother, and then we will lose both. Ephialtes chided, not liking that his brother was considering the goddess offer. Otis' lust was clouding his judgment. He needed to be the rational one in this situation. We will have you first and then release Ares, Ephialtes replied to Artemis. The goddess narrowed her eyes at them. She saw the looks on their faces. Greed, lust, arrogance. All emotions she could use to her advantage. The words spoken by the giants were as good as nothing. She would have to be an enormous fool to believe them. She commenced her plan. She looked to her sides, looking for escape routes. This action did not go unnoticed to the twin giants. She was going to run, and they knew it. Otis was the first one to charge, a half step earlier than Ephialtes. His desire added to his eagerness. He will have the goddess today, he will go first. He won't let his brother take first action. She is his. Ephialtes soon followed, though he demanded for Hera. The virgin goddess will have to do for now. He will have her first before the queen of the gods. Spears in hand, the twin giants rushed towards Artemis. Good. They made the first move. She needed them to do that. She needed them to think that they had a chance to catch her. Fluidly, she transformed herself into a deer. A form she is much familiar and comfortable with. I need to reinforce the idea that they are the ones in the advantage. That they are the ones hunting me. She ran into the forest. In her domain she is peerless. She could smell them. She knows exactly where they are. Otis was 230 cubits directly behind her. Ephialtes is 25 cubits to the left of Otis. ANA cubit 0. 4 to 0. 5 meters. She slowly veered to the left. In addition, she gradually lost her speed, as if she was getting exhausted. She drew them to a false sense of security. Making sure everything seemed natural, for the pair must never figure out what she was trying to do. Ephialtes looked to his brother and gave a single nod. He did not need to voice to him what he intended to do. He moved further and further to the left until he was no longer able to see Otis. Together they hunted, intent to capture their prey that was slowly but surely slowing down. He saw her taking a rest, her shadow pointing directly to him. He prepared his spear once again. He did not see his brother anywhere. He must not have caught up yet. This was his chance. Without his brother, he gets the first serving of the fine goddess. He waited for an opening. Eyes focused, muscles tensed, spear ready, he threw. He saw her taking a rest, her shadow pointing directly away from him. He prepared his spear once again. He did not see his brother anywhere. He must not have caught up yet. This was his chance. Without his brother, he gets the first serving of the fine goddess. He waited for an opening. Eyes focused, muscles tensed, spear ready, he threw. She saw them as she stilled to a rest. One straight to the direction of the sun, the other opposite to his brother. She looked around, feigning to look for them. This is going to work. She grinned inwardly. Then she gave them the opening they were looking for. She saw the spears flying just a moment after she sat. The spears were flying fast, thrown by powerful giants. Anticipated attacks, however, were much easier to dodge. And so she did. Just before the spears hit their mark, she was gone in a blur. So much tension was finally released from her, relieved that her plan worked. She was safe. No more giants threatening to destroy the gods and raping her. No more spears coming her way. Those would definitely hurt had she gotten hit. She froze. She didn't hear any screams of pain, nor did she hear any metal going through flesh. Curses. She spat. Her plan had failed. She was going to have to make a run for it. She scanned the area again, and she saw it. Now standing in place was a blonde-haired, orange eyes with toad-like pupils young man. He was tall, but he was only tall for a human. He was not a giant. He didn't look like any other monsters that she knew of. She blinked again and the man's eyes changed into a bright blue pair of human eyes. He had nothing peculiar to him aside from the whisker-like marks on his cheeks. She was angry. An unknown factor had just ruined her plans. Now she had to deal with the giants as well as their unexpected help. She needed to think and react quickly. The fake resting was in the end good for her as she got actual rest from it. She needed as much energy as possible when dealing with an unknown. "Oi!" the man shouted, eyes darting to and from each of the twin giants. "If you're going to hunt deer, try not kill yourselves while you're at it, won't you?" the man exclaimed to the giants again. Ephialtes growled. This blond man was standing where Artemis was, and he was holding his spear and what looks to be his brother's. An unknown man had just rescued Artemis and had their weapons. The situation has become a 2 versus 2. He did not know where Artemis had gone to, but they needed their weapons back, now. And so he charged. He was surprised to see Otis charging directly from the other side, but glad he was thinking of the same thing. He threw a right straight aimed for the blonde's face and missed. "Hey!" the blonde shouted as he dodged. "I saved both of your lives, what are you doing?" "Silence, human. We know you side with the huntress." Ephialtes followed up with a jab that missed. "With who?" "Artemis," Otis exclaimed as he tried to kick the blonde. "Who?" he asked again as he stepped back. Artemis watched the short but quick exchange from the sidelines. The blonde man was not on the giant's side after all. But he wasn't on her side as well, he was a third party. So, she continued to observe. "Give us our spears back and then maybe we talk," Ephialtes demanded. "Why would I give weapons to you when you are so clearly trying to kill me?" he shouted back. "I can feel the strength behind those punches and kicks, so don't try to tell me otherwise," the blonde added. Otis growled and he stepped in again to kill the blonde. The longer it takes to kill this man, the longer they can go back to hunting Artemis. They already lost sight of her and there's no telling how far she is now. The blonde is probably here to stall time as she escapes. He stomped hard and the ground shook violently, the blonde momentarily losing balance, which then gave him an opportunity to hit the blonde square in the face. An opportunity he happily took. The blonde flew back fast and straight and through a couple of trees. Ephialtes walked and took their spears that the blonde dropped as he was punched. "Here's yours, brother. Thank you. Shall we go back to hunting Artemis then?" "Let us." Suddenly, Otis was sent flying back. Attacked by the man he previously punched, Otis was currently knocked out. The blonde stood where Otis was, eyes back to the original shape and color they first were when he appeared. The other giant was upon him as soon as he punched the first one. They soon came into an exchange of fists. The blonde was getting more hits in than he was receiving. The giant was strong, but he did not have the same training he had. He did not have the footwork, the technique. He was easy to read, easy to evade. Artemis continued to watch, and she noticed something very useful. The wounds inflicted by the blonde to the giants was not healing nearly as well as they normally should. He was not a god, he was not a man either. Perhaps a demigod, that would explain the strength and injuries dealt to the giants. She decided to think about that later. What matters is she had someone who could possibly kill the twins. She had best to use that to her advantage. Her initial plan had failed due to the blonde, but she could still succeed with her goal using the same blonde. She breathed deeply, preparing to join the fight. Otis did not have time to react. One moment he was walking to Ephialtes and the next he was on the ground knocked away by something. He was hurting. Pain. My chest has bruised. Someone actually managed to hurt and injure him. He was seeing red. The blonde heard a loud roar and sensed the first giant that he took out homing in. He sidestepped to dodge. TCH. The situation had become more troublesome. A 2 versus 1 now. He didn't really intend to fight today, but luck decided otherwise. He was just heading to his favorite spot in the forest when he saw what was about to happen to the two giants. He saved the lives of the twins, but he ended up having a fight with them, a fight that was escalating in force and in lethality. He would have to go to a stronger mode if he wanted to take care of them, but he decided against that just yet. He needed to learn more about the enemy. He was about to make a clone to even out the number disadvantage when the same deer that they were hunting earlier came into view. It was going in fast and he thought it would go right to the fight, but it stopped at just about a safe distance from them. Then he saw it transform into a gorgeous auburn-haired young woman in silver clothing, bow and arrow in hand. The blonde was only barely able to register what happened. The woman placed an arrow into her bow, aimed, drew, and fired. All done faster than the time it takes for him to throw a kunai. She was fast. And her arrow was faster. It hit the newly rejoined giant straight through his left leg. Both giants turned their head to the direction the arrow came from. Artemis! Artemis! Both giants roared at the same time. Artemis? The one they accused me to be on the side of? He asked himself. Oh, he got it now. They weren't hunting deer, they were trying to kill her, and she them. She tried to take the both of them out at the same time using their own weapons. And he ruined it. Oh. I got in the middle of the fight between these three. He was annoyed at himself now. He understood why they attacked him so suddenly now. I don't know who's right or wrong here nor who's good or bad, but I just don't want to get myself involved any further. Hey, this is all a big misunderstanding. You are here for her, right? I don't know her. I'm not involved with her, so I'm going to just leave you two to your business, he told the giants. Ephialtes turned his gaze back to the blonde, eyes narrowing. The bruises I got from him are healing much slower than supposed to. He's a threat to us. We will have to deal with him now. Stay right there, Yellow. He was not able to finish his sentence before an arrow went right through his head. Another went through the other giant's chest. Well, that was a quick progression of events, the remaining male thought. He turned to look at the woman who killed the giants. Her gaze was still strong. Bow still ready. They're still alive. She spoke. He did not know how, but she did not shout those words, and yet he still heard them. Her voice carried through the forest without losing volume, and he heard her as if she was next to him. The blonde turned to look at where the corpses were supposed to be. And true to her word, the giants were already up, wounds dealt by the arrow already healed. He groaned at that, not liking having to fight immortal enemies. You will have to deal the killing blow to deal with them. The woman spoke again. The blonde raised an eyebrow at that and looked at the giants more closely. The bruises they got from fighting him were still there, healing slower than the arrow wound did. Artemis moved through the forest, moving to a position where the blonde was in between her and the giants. It was easier to give support fire in the rear. As soon as I get my hands on you, I'm going to enjoy my time with you, Artemis, Otis said with anger. The twin giants were furious. They were going to kill the blonde and the huntress, that was for sure. Such arrogance to think that they could kill him and his brother. They were going to make their deaths painful. The blonde was only able to deal damage because he either caught them off guard or fighting only one of them. Together, the blonde would not stand a chance. The blonde had to duck down to avoid an oncoming punch. They were getting faster, he thought. He did not have the time to further think as the other giant prepared a kick to where he dodged. The blonde would have to block this one. He raised his arm in defense when an arrow hit the giant's leg, which gave him time to dodge. He gave a silent nod to the marksman for that one. He doesn't need to go power up now. His current mode with the woman's help would be enough to deal with them. He rushed back to the giant's area muttering shadow clone before an identical copy of him popped into existence. He went straight into a fist fight with them. He was the better fighter, he was sure of that, but each swing from one of them carried so much power he had to make sure he didn't get hit. His clone dispelled every time it got hit, but he was quick to replace it. Deciding that numbers is not the way to go in this fight, he kept his clones to one. The huntress was good. Every time he was about to get hit, an arrow went buzzing by to stagger the giant for just a moment, which was enough for him to get away. So far, she was a large reason why he wasn't hit yet. She was also a large reason he got so many hits in. An arrow would always come right when he needs it. Her skill with the bow was impeccable. Fighting together, the twin giants were so easy. However, this was turning into an ugly and high-risk fight. He needed to constantly be perfect, to dodge an attack. The enemy just needed to get lucky once and land a hit. He was confident he wouldn't die in one hit, but he didn't want to get injured either. And although he got a lot of hits in, they were still healing the injuries, albeit slowly. They needed to end this fight soon. He moved faster now, tapping into a different power source. He decked the first giant and moved to the second, an elbow straight to the head. He threw him directly to his twin. "Huntress!" he shouted. She knew what he needed her to do, and without fail, she sent 4 arrows. The first 2 hit one giant each in head, knocking them down. The second 2 went through a leg each, pinning the legs to the ground. "Thanks," the blonde responded. He drew back his arm and a large spinning ball of energy materialized on his open palm. The spinning grew more violently until blades started appearing. Spinning so wild that it was screeching. It was large as well, easily larger than the man holding it. Its size was closer to that of the twin giants themselves. Though they were small for giants, for the spinning ball of energy to be their size was frightening. The twins' eyes regenerated first, but they weren't fast enough to remove the arrow pinning them to the ground. The blonde man threw the ball of energy directly at them. Their last moments spent desperately trying to dodge. The blonde moved away as soon as he threw his attack. He jumped to a spot closer to the woman with the bow, but still at a safe distance where he could react to her should she do anything. Artemis narrowed her eyes at the attack. It was strong, too strong for a mortal to wield. She contemplated bringing him to Olympus. Then the explosion came. She was definitely bringing him to Olympus now. The explosion had died down and she saw no traces of the giants. Satisfied, she turned to the blonde man. "Olympus is in gratitude for your service, mortal," she told him. "Olympus? I take it you gods are real then?" The blonde's eyes are back to blue human eyes again? She just nodded at that. "Nice to meet you, Lady Artemis. My name's Naruto." He grinned. Sunshine blonde hair and a smile as bright as the sun, probably a demigod son of my brother then, she thought. A demigod surviving to his age and only knowing of Olympus until now with that much power is suspicious. "I sure am glad I ended up helping you instead of the giants. I didn't know who was in the right or in the wrong in the beginning and was just gonna bail. I just ended up fighting them to save my skin. Luckily I was on the side of the gods." He smiled in relief. "Who are your parents?" she asked him. "Well, that's a random question. Besides, aren't you a goddess? Don't you just, know things?" "No, we don't. That's disappointing. Your expectations of us gods do not concern me. So what can you do? I do not intend to list my skills and powers to you mortal." "That's fair. Did you really help your mother give birth to your twin?" "Yes." She was smug about that. Freaky but cool. "Did your grandfather really eat your uncles and aunts?" "We are getting off track, mortal. Who are your parents?" "Never met them. I'm an orphan. Is the moon really your chariot?" "How did you get your powers?" "Through hard work and training." He grinned at that fact, proud of what he has reached. "Who taught you?" "My teacher's dead too. This is going nowhere." She was annoyed. "Do you really have a bunch of young girls that follow you around?" "Yes, my hunters." She was annoyed. "Approach, mortal, I will need to bring you to Olympus." "What for? Didn't I just help you out?" "A mortal capable of killing giants with a single attack is dangerous. You are an unknown, we need to decide what to do with you. Can't I just promise to not cause any trouble? You even said, Olympus is in your gratitude, earlier." "Olympus does not owe anyone anything, it thanks but it does not owe." "Can't you just give me a pass then? Olympus does not have to know, you can take all the credit for the giant's defeat. You would have killed them anyway had I not intervened in the first place. You don't have to tell them I was here. Remembering that tidbit just annoyed her even more. It is my duty to bring you to the gods, besides, I have no doubt that they have seen everything. Please. He bargained, bright blue eyes striking right through her. No pliés. He tried a little harder this time. I can't. All right, all right. He sighed. He looked straight at her again, silver eyes staring back. I'm sorry, he said as sincerely as he could. An explosion of power came from the man. He was suddenly cloaked in a golden-orange aura. Black markings in a pattern all over his body, with a notable set of circles on his stomach. His eyes orange once again, but his pupils in a plus shape. His whiskers thickened to a set of black bars on his cheeks. Before she could further examine him, he was gone. She was frustrated at him now, leaving her to pick up the mess he caused. Annoying blonde. Artemis stood just outside a luscious forest. The forest ended on a hill, overlooking the great city of Calydon and its fertile fields. Her eyes cold but focused. She was furious. Disrespected by a lowly king. Forgetting her in his rights to the gods. She did not know which was worse, purposely omitting her or being idiotic enough to forget her. Punishment was only appropriate for such acts. And she had the perfect punishment for them. One that they would not be forgetting for some time. Power began to emanate from her. Silver eyes glowed a faint light. It lasted only for a couple of seconds. It was silent now, but her gaze still held onto the city below. Then the earth began to rumble. With every second the quaking became more violent and violent. The sound was getting clearer and louder. Something large was running. She held up her left fist, signaling for what she summoned to stop. The steps stopped, yet the ground still shook. It planted its feet, skidding through the ground. She did not need to look that the beast had stopped exactly beside her, on her left. Its breath was impossible to not hear. It has been quite some time since we last met, Lady Artemis. That was something she did not expect to hear. The voice was familiar, yet she could not precisely identify to whom it belonged. On the corner of her right eye, she saw the source of the voice. So, she turned her head. A blonde. The blonde that killed Otis and Ephialtes, she recognized. How are you still alive? Was the question that came from her. Contrary to what you called me back then, I'm not quite mortal, he replied with a smile. Yes, I gathered that. Came a deadpan reply. I meant how are you immortal? You're not a god, nor are you a titan. You don't feel like anything I know. What are you? She followed up. I'm just a human. Who gave you immortality? She said irritatedly. She didn't know if he was telling the truth or not. No one, I just am. He shrugged. Technically I did get my immortality from someone, but she doesn't need to know that, he thought. Answer me, man. She commanded. I'm not telling you, came his stubborn refusal. I don't have the time for this. She sighed. The blonde was not her current priority. She no longer has any duty to bring him anyway. The gods had lost their interest in him over the centuries. It would be good if she brought him to Olympus, but she did not have to. She, however, had to punish King Oeneus. She looked at him once more. What was his name again? He was staring at the beast. Contrary to usual reactions, his face was in awe. He did not show fear or disgust. There's lightning coming from its mouth. He gawked at that fact. Yes. And its eyes, fire. Yes. Its bristles, as stiff and long as a spear. Yes. Annoyed now. Naruto, his name is Naruto, she remembered. I've never seen a boar like that, its tusks are the size of an elephant's. He continued. It is quite unique, even compared to other monstrous boars, she said. He continued to stare at the monstrous boar. What is it doing out here? Though he asked that with an eye smile, Artemis did not miss what he really meant. He knows I'm going to release it on Calydon. I will set it upon them. Her eyes pointing to the city in view. It was pointless to lie about the inevitable. It was his turn to sigh. I guessed as much. I was there, you know, at the harvest festival. He was looking at the city now too, mirroring her actions. You just have to punish the king. Releasing that boar will kill hundreds of innocents, he told her. I know, was her only reply. Human lives were puny things to her and the gods. A few hundred dead do not really bother them. He entered sage mode in a single moment. Countless time spent training and the overwhelming nature energy coming from the goddess beside him enabling him to do so. He reached out to the boar, tried to calm it down. As soon as he did, she spoke. What you're trying to do is futile. I have absolute control over creatures of the wild. A dispirited laugh came from the blonde. Okay, trying not to further the goddess' anger. How did you do that? She asked inquisitively. I'm a sage, he answered simply. Ah. It made sense. You thought a sage could overpower the goddess of the wild? She flaunted. She was not affronted with that thinking, she was just glad to meet a sage, someone with such a connection to nature. No, but I still had to try. It's a duty to stop your friends from making a wrong decision, you know. You think we are friends? She asked disgustingly, being friends with a man? Never. If I stretch the definition by a bit, then yes. He grinned at her. We are not, she said with resolution. We fought side by side against the giants back then. That does not make us friends. It does to me. There's something unspoken when you fight against or with someone, you know. No, the boar was grunting now. It was getting restless. The lightning from its mouth crackled louder and louder. The grass directly below it was scorched from the heat. It is time to release the boar. She took a deep breath as she looked at the city. I really don't think this is the right thing to do, Lady Artemis, he reminded her again. The moralities of man do not apply to us. His words were ignored. He sighed in defeat. His words did not work. He thought about fighting her to change her mind, just as he would have done so many years ago, back in his teenage years. But it was not worth it. Pride and respect matter a lot to gods. She would not change her mind after a single fight. Change would come over time. Then, until next we meet, he said politely, then vanished. She did not look back nor respond, her eyes were straight, right at the city of Kalydon. Go. A single command was given to the boar. You're hunting in this forest today? He asked. Yes. Enjoy your hunt. She need not respond to that. Back from a hunt? Yes. You look exhausted? I am all right. What's with the young girl look? Nothing. I just felt like it. Weird, but okay, that's a far scarier look on your face than usual. I just met with Aphrodite. Ah, that explains it. And I have to go meet my brother later. I'll keep you in my prayers. He snickered at his own joke. That was terrible. Says you. He huffed. Will you ever let me on your chariot? Never. Father would sooner stop laying with women than for me to let you on my chariot. TCH. I guessed as much. Do you have a favorite maiden from your hunt? No, you answered way too quickly. I bet you do have one. Hey. I adore all of my hunters equally. What a standard reply, you definitely have one. That's it, I'm shooting you. Going to meditate? She was the first to speak. No, I'm going to try my hand with fishing today, he excitedly grinned. She replied in acknowledgement. What is it today? Stag? Bear? No, the Crommyonian sow. Ooh, exciting. She sighed at his childishness. The goddess of the moon saw him first. He was sleeping, on a tree branch by the lake. She decided to ignore him and proceeded to do what she came here for. She signaled the herd of deer to drink on this side of the lake. It is safe here, she mentally told them. She heard the rustle of the leaves and the sway of the branch. He's awake. Yo was his simple greeting. Greetings, came her curt reply. Who's driving your chariot? He pointed to the moon across the sky. I still am, she replied. Oh yeah, goddess, he remembered with a chuckle. He moved to a spot near her, minding to still give some space between them. He sat on a log, his body facing her but his head turned to the lake. They basked in the moonlight. Not speaking. He relaxed into meditation, just as he so often does whenever he's comfortable. How do you evade Olympus? She inquired of the blonde. That's a trade secret, you know. She twitched an eye at that. I can't tell you that or else Olympus might actually get me. He showed a cheeky smile. Fine. She resigned. I haven't done anything of note to catch the attention of the gods again. I don't really try to hide that much. If Olympus really wanted me, they would send their best hunter to do it. Fair. Have you tried finding your parents? She prodded. I didn't, then one day I just found out they were dead. How? I met their souls. That was an eyebrow raiser. She gestured for him to continue. I'll tell you next time. He dodged. That was definitely suspicious, but she was going to let it slide for now. He will most likely tell her in the future anyway, as he has said. All right. You met both of their souls? So you're not a demigod? Yeah, both of them, and no, I'm not one. I would have bet a ton of gold on you being a son of Apollo. You? Betting? Of course. I'm not so uptight as to avoid it. She huffed. Your parents died, so that means you used to be mortal. Yeah. I think I gained immortality at the age of 17, but I stopped physically aging at 22. He saw the expectant look in her eye. I'll tell you all about it in the future, do not worry. She replied with a nod. So, how long ago was this? She was indirectly asking him his age. I'm not quite sure. I am about 850 years old now, give or take a few decades. She smirked at that tidbit. You're younger than me by about half a millennia. Respect your elders, child. He laughed without reservations at that. It wasn't always that Artemis would crack a joke. I had a friend who tended deer. He shared as he looked over to the reason they met tonight. She did not say anything, a sign for him to continue. Well, I don't know if tended was the right word. Deer are still wild animals after all. He and his family were special. The deer did not attack them. Anyone else would be attacked. The deer trusted them, so they took care of deer whenever they could. My friend bonded with deer too, as was customary for their family, but he always told me deer were troublesome. He finished his story. She smiled at that. They were indeed sometimes troublesome, but she loved them still. They were gentle, intuitive, athletic, beautiful creatures. They were one of her sacred animals. They stood in silence for a while, appreciating nature. Naruto was the one who broke the silence. I heard what you did to Queen Niobe a year ago. She immediately scowled at that, not liking the woman nor the memory of what she did. The mortal queen had the gall to insult her mother. Just the thought of it makes her ichor boil. Sometimes she thinks that killing her 7 daughters was not enough. Neither was turning the queen to stone. She should have prolonged their suffering and punishment. And, are you here to give me some lecture? Just as you did back in Kaliden? He could hear the anger in her voice. Mood soured by the topic. He did not let her emotions and words affect him. He looked at her, initiated eye contact. No, his voice, the softest it had been around her. I understand why you did it. He continued. He broke off eye contact but continued speaking. Your mother raised the 2 of you alone. When she was pregnant with the both of you, no one took her in due to Hera's curse. She could not settle on any land. Always wandering, never resting. Running from creatures sent to kill her. On top of all that, she had to go through all of that alone. She only found peace on Delos, where she gave birth to you and Apollo. He took a moment to breathe. I can only imagine the love and affection she has for you. The warmth she provides. The comfort she brings. Who would not love a mother like that? He gave her a small smile. I understand why you did what you did. He repeated his earlier words. Artemis did not know what to say. She expected some righteous rambling from him. About how killing was a terrible act. Perhaps his immortality had changed his thoughts on the matter. No, it wasn't just that, she thought. After a few seconds of silence, she voiced out her thoughts. Thank you. She did not ask for his validation, did not want nor did she need it. Yet he gave it, nonetheless. It was warm. So, she cherished this feeling, this moment. Where she felt for the first time what it was like to have a male friend who understood. It's no problem, was his short reply. The deer were getting rowdy, their thirst quenched and the fowls were tired of playing. It is time to go. Farewell, Naruto. Until next time, Artemis. Artemis groaned as she hung her head back. Of course, now he pops in. Sounded the complaint in her head. He looked at the commotion happening in front of him for a few seconds, then directed his gaze onto hers. A single eyebrow was raised, indicating his inquiry on what was happening. A stag was being eaten by hunting dogs. A large pack of hunting dogs. The screams of the stags were loud and desperate, trying to fight for its life. That was not the odd thing about the scene though. What was odd was that it was not a normal stag. It was not even a whole stag. He could see the 2 front legs of the stag were not legs at all, but the arms of a man, flailing wildly. A portion of its torso was still man. The head was a crowned stag, massive antlers. Its lower body was stag as well. Or, what was left of its lower body. It was currently being eaten there after all. He saw me bathing, naked. A collected voice, as always, came from her. That's bad. His face grimaced. So, you turned him into a stag and set hunting dogs upon him, he continued. Yes, no man who has seen me naked has a right to live, she said as a matter of fact. Did he at least apologize once he realized what he had seen? He asked. He felt sorry for the man, but it was just pure bad luck. When one stumbles upon a naked goddess, their best chance to live is to beg for mercy. And if that goddess was one of the 3 maiden goddesses? You have to be on your knees as soon as you can. No, he had not the time to realize what had happened when I turned him into a stag. That made sense considering the goddess. I'm surprised you did not kill him on the spot. A teasing tone came out of him. I can still be kind. She huffed. Next time though, try to hear them out first if you can, he advised the huntress. I make no promises, and I don't expect you to. She waved her right hand and the screaming from the man stopped. No, the man is still screaming, we just can't hear it. She blocked all sounds coming from that area. The scene has become blurry as well, as if my eyes just glaze over that area. I can't properly focus my eyes on that location without conscious effort, the sage noted. She leaned back onto a tree. Eyes closed, concentrating. Do you want to meet them? She asked. Who? The blonde's eyebrows furrowed in confusion. My hunters. His eyes widened in surprise before he settled on a smile. Yes. Let me call for them. I had them leave the area as I wanted some privacy, she informed him. To watch the man die, no doubt, he thought. He nodded at that. He too rested his back on the tree behind him, mirroring her earlier action. He saw her conjure her bow and an arrow in hand. She aimed it directly to the sky and then let loose. Naruto heard a faint whistle as the arrow flew. That must be the signal for them to go to her, he thought. And in no time, he heard people running through the forest. A sound he was so familiar with back in his home village. It was a bit nostalgic, he admitted. Then he heard the taut bowstrings. He could see them now, dozens of little girls, pointing their bows at him. He raised both of his hands as a sign of peace. Lower your bows, this one is harmless. The goddess spoke. Harmless? He said in mock outrage. I'll have you know I once killed 2 giants, he proudly said, chin and chest out. With my help. Bah, I could have taken them on by myself. But you did not. But I could have. All hypotheticals. He scrunched his nose at that. Have they resurrected yet? I'll take them on now and show you. Stop joking about giants resurrecting. Now, introduce yourself properly. The lieutenant of Artemis stepped forward, and begrudgingly, was about to introduce herself to the male in focus. Orders were orders after all. She noted the rest of the hunters stepped forward, ready to introduce themselves after her. All still wary of the male that had a peculiar exchange with their goddess. All right. Greetings, hunters of Artemis, my name's Naruto. Your lady's only friend. The blonde did an exaggerated bow. The lieutenant blinked, as did the rest of the hunters. They got it wrong. Their lady's earlier order was not directed to them after all. As lieutenant, she spoke first. Greetie, she was interrupted once again, but this time it was Artemis who spoke. I have plenty of friends besides, I'm not sure if we're even friends. Annoyance clearly in her voice. She would rather fade than call a male friend out loud. Your words wound me, huntress god, he said in mock hurt, hands clenched on his chest. Cut it with the dramatics, you remind me of my brother. All right. He turned to the lieutenant. Continue, young one, I apologize for the interruptions, he said with a smile. The lieutenant took a breath before speaking again. Greetings, Lord Naruto. Not a lord. He piped up. I am the lieutenant of Lady Artemis. My name is Zoe. Lady Artemis has mentioned thee once. One by one, the huntresses introduced themselves to the blonde. It is nice to finally meet all of you, he smiled brightly. I hope to get along with all of you youngsters, he said. He wondered how long that would take. All of the reactions he got from the hunters were not good. They were as polite as they could be only because of Artemis' orders. There was no doubt that every one of them did not like him. Varying degrees of dislike, but dislike nonetheless. Youngsters, the blonde repeated what he said in a whisper. He snapped his head to Artemis. I sounded so old, his face in horror. The goddess chuckled at that. It is time for us to go, farewell Naruto. Invite me to hunt when you have a really powerful target, something much stronger and dangerous than the giants we killed. He added in a hurry. I'll think about it. All right, farewell, he waved with a smile. It was a nice and peaceful bath after a tiring hunt. The feeling of removing the sweat and grime was euphoric. But then she sensed a mortal presence. It was too close. She looked for the source of the presence and then she saw a male looking right at her. The power was already in her hand, her arms already up in an instant. Instinct powered her quick reactions. She was one swipe away from turning the male into a jackalope and then killing him. But before she was able to do all of that, she heard a voice. Next time though, try to hear them out first if you can. The blonde's words echoed in her mind. She stopped. Fine. She followed the blonde's advice. Upon closer inspection, the male was not a man, it was just a boy. He was kneeling. Mercy, mercy, it was an accident. I didn't mean to stumble upon you, my lord. Spare me please, he said through his sobs and tears. He just continued begging and repeating that he was sorry and that it was an accident. Now she felt bad. She could feel the sheer terror coming from the boy. As a protector of young children, she should never be the cause of such emotions from a child. How old are you? She tried to sound as gentle as she could. 10, my lord, he said through his tears, so young. Your name? Cypriotes, my lord, still sniffing. Young Cypriotes, your pleading has reached me and I believe your words. The boy's face brightened so quickly, so I'll give you two options. First is a quick and merciful death. He was shaking his head at that, dislike evident, underscore. The second is I turn you into a young girl and you join my hunt. His eyes widened at that, clearly not expecting such an option. But it did not take long for resolve to show on his face. I would be honored to join your hunt, my lord, he exclaimed with a deep bow. Come, I shall introduce you to the rest of the hunters, but before that. She snapped her fingers and the young boy in front of her turned into a girl of the same age. Feminine features clear on his face and not a trace of the boyish face she once had. Her hair was still short like that of a boy's, but it would grow long, provided she chooses to do so. Still, she unmistakably is a girl now. Perfect. The goddess said, content. Thankful she remembered the blonde's words in time. Artemis, she turned to see him, idly stoking the fire. Which one of the Olympians should I be wary of? The ones that will most likely have problems with me. Only just a few Olympians, really. First, Apollo. He will come to you sooner or later. He makes it almost a life mission to dig into the males that interact with Mother, and I am honestly surprised he hasn't gone to yet. Maybe he's gotten better. You should not worry about him though, I'll deal with him if he gets too annoying, she said. He noted she looked tired at his brother's antics. Second, will be Athena. My sister does not like the unknown, and that is exactly what you are. She also never forgets. Your killing of the giants is always on the back of her head. She will be wary of you. If you do anything further noteworthy, she might pay you a visit. He nodded at that. Third, she took a bit of a pause, unsure if this was worth mentioning, is Aphrodite. The bimbo will be interested in you the same way she is interested in all other conventionally attractive men. He laughed at her clear dislike of the love goddess. Hades might be another, but only if he finds out you've met the souls of your parents. He doesn't appreciate those things. He nodded at that. Zeus is potentially the most troublesome. He does not like other beings having too much power. You already interested him before, but since you have laid low, that has passed. However, if that was the limit of your power, then his interest in you will pass. Thanks, I will keep them in mind. He fidgeted a bit before he continued, hypothetically, how would the Olympians react if I were to tell them I came from another world? She stared at him oddly at that. She closed her eyes before she spoke. Everyone would mess with you. Apollo and Athena would question you non-stop. Hermes would ask how you traveled from there to here. Aphrodite would be Aphrodite. Ares would want to fight you. Hephaestus would ask you about the technology in your world. Everyone would have questions, she said. And you, what would you think? He asked. There it was, the question he dreaded the most. The question he wanted the answer to, the most. The goddess of the hunt would be a tiny bit irritated that you did not tell her sooner, but she wouldn't mind. He gave her a sheepish laugh, but smiled, sorry, and thank you. So, How strong are you? That's it? That's the first question you ask me after I tell you I was not originally from here? I can just ask you questions about your old home next time. It would be more interesting to fight you right now. He laughed and stood up from where he sat. Would you do me the honor of gracing me with a spar? He bowed to a perfect 90-degree angle. She pretended to think about it, to play along his exaggerations. Fine, I'll put you in your place, world traveler. They were both smiling at that, excitement clear on their faces. Do you know when your birthday is? Did the mortals get it right? On the 6th day of the 11th month? I was born on the 6th day of the 8th month. Mine is on the 10th day of the 10th month. What's this? She examined the three-pronged knife in her hand. A kunai, a throwing knife. It's a gift from me to you. Happy birthday. She blinked at that. I'm the goddess of the hunt. I have an infinite amount of knives at my disposal. Why a knife? She asked confusedly at the choice of gift. That's precisely why. Knives are natural to you. You wouldn't mind carrying this one around, he said as a matter of fact. Besides, this one is magic, he added. And what does this do? If you throw it on the ground, it calls upon a great being of power. Use it when you're in a pinch. Then I accept your gift. She nodded, understanding the meaning behind his words. I am unworthy of your benevolence, my lord, he said, teasing her again on her choice of words. Naruto heard a loud thud from the thing she threw at him. Artemis, what is this? He asked. A boar. Yes, I know, but why? For food and nutrition, of course. I brought some berries and vegetables as well. We will be having a meal together. He blinked owlishly at that, before a soft chuckle came from him. Okay. He gave her a blinding smile. He almost forgot it was the 10th day of the 10th month today. Naruto, do me favor and never meet Apollo. You do know that will only make me want to meet him more, don't you? I don't think I am ready to handle both of you at the same time. I don't think I ever will. She added. Oh come on, we're not that bad. Last time we met, you were trying to convince my hunters to ask me to dye all of our clothes orange, a disgustingly bright orange. You had a petition and all. A bit of variation in clothing is good for everyone. He defended himself. Also, I got a third of your hunters to sign. He gloated. He was glad to remember that memory. He felt good. Forming relationships with immortals was better for him. The sanity and relief of the thought that they would not die was beyond helpful. He tried with mortals, he really did. For more than half a millennia since he gained his immortality, he tried to live as normal as he could. He would form friendships, apprenticeships, and he would date. But in the end, they all died in the blink of an eye. Time is too long, human lives are too short. Every time, he would get attached, and every single time, he would watch them eventually die. It was toxic. Constantly getting hurt. That was not to say that he was not happy, he was, but so much unhappiness came from it as well. He still adores mortals, values, and treasures them. Just not as much as he used to. He still spent the majority of his time with mortals. Artemis had changed everything though. Through her he discovered a whole new world of immortals, beings like him. After enough time had passed since he killed the giants, he first sought out nymphs, dryads, satyrs. They were like him, never dying of old age but could still be killed, and they had a connection to nature. They brought him great comfort. None gave him peace more than the goddess in front of him did. She was an equal, she could give him a fight, and together they could give anyone a fight. There was a serene comfort within him with every moment she shared with him. Those silver eyes of hers complemented her auburn hair so perfectly he would sometimes see her on people that had a similar shade of hair. She had more patience now than when he first laid his eyes on her, but her temper was still just as fierce. She had a weird selection for gifts, but she meant well. She would scowl at his jokes, but her lips would curl upwards soon after. Her words were sharp most of the time, but her actions were as warm as sunlight. If we all wore orange clothing, we'd be spotted from 10 leagues away. He turned his head towards her, eyes scanning up and down her body. He put his hand to his chin in thought. How about red? Red would look good. That triggered a tick. Her forehead scrunched in annoyance. Keep your fantasies to yourself, Blondie. Hey, that was an objective recommendation. He pouted. Also, Blondie? Since when did you use such language? He bellowed out a massive laugh. I'm spending way too much time with you. That will be the last time you hear that from me. Forget I ever said that or else I'll shoot. Imagine Apollo's reaction if I told him this. I'm shooting. The blonde laid with his back on the ground, panting. He had an unusual appearance today. Today, he was covered in golden flames all over his body. Along with the flames were a set of black patterns, the most notable of which was the circular one on his navel. Hey Kurama, that should be enough, he said in between breaths. From his shoulder extended what looked to be a fox's head. We should do this a lot more often. Tell me, why do we need to avoid those gods again? It said. Because the gods here are unreasonable, they kill on the slightest of whims. They have the most fragile of egos. And their king is the most paranoid of them all. It would be in our best interest to not gain their attention, at least until we have a clearer idea of their powers. The fox just growled at that. I'm going back to sleep, wake me up when it's time for another exercise. All right. And with that, the golden cloak vanished from him. He began to take down the first set of seals he put around the area, seals that he thought would help him hide somewhat from the gods. The seals contained his chakra within the boundaries so as not to alert everyone of massive amounts of energy being released in a short time. Afterwards, he would then put a second set of seals that would let the chakra disperse evenly and slowly to the environment. Eventually, months later, no amount of chakra would be left here. It wasn't perfect, but it was something. He needed these seals when he would go on his exercises, as the fox had put it. Those were exercises that kept him from losing chakra control, familiarity with the techniques, and etc. He only needed these every few years or so, but whenever he did, he would use up a lot of power. He was designing a better seal. One that could open up a pocket dimension for him, where he could be away from all the eyes and ears of every being on this planet. Alas, it would still be decades or maybe centuries away from completion. And that's the last one, he said to himself after he put up the last set of seals. I wonder what she's doing now. I haven't seen her in a decade. The blonde set off to try and seek out his friend. Half a league away, a set of mechanical celestial bronze eyes were staring at the spot where the blonde was. Interesting, he thought. He stood up to a height far taller than a human, but shorter than a normal giant. Black hair covered the top of his head. He started walking to the direction where the blonde with the fox demon laid for rest. He was smitten. Princess Merope had not even half the beauty of the goddess before him. He was smitten since the first day they met on the island of Delos. It was a stroke of luck for him that she saw him hunt, for if there was anything he could bet his life on, it was his hunting skills. The goddess of the hunt had acknowledged him as a hunter, and his heart swelled at her recognition. He befriended her, and kept showing off his skills. He was enamored by her so much that he asked to join her band of hunters. Very well. I, Artemis, welcome you, Orion, to the hunters. The first male to do so, she exclaimed. Year after year, he would grow closer to the leader of the hunt. With his addition, they hunted more and more monsters. Some were dangerous enough that they wouldn't think to hunt it without him. Year after year he took greater pride in his skills. It was not even half a decade since he joined, but he had established himself as a reliable and vital part of the hunt. He relished in the hunt, he breathed to hunt. There is nothing I could not hunt, he once exclaimed. Year after year, his feelings and desire grew. Yet the object of his affection had not once looked his way. He was growing impatient at her lack of interest. He would impress her, and eventually she would be his. He, the most skilled hunter, had the perfect target in mind, something he had been obsessing over for the past week. I have a suggestion on the next beast we hunt, he offered. Artemis was the only one around. That is, this one does not look like a beast or any other monster, it wears the skin of a normal man. Artemis let him continue. She knew of some monsters that fit this description. I had not heard of anything quite like this beast. I said that he wears the skin of a normal man, but his true form is that of a monster fox. I chanced upon him about a week ago. The man laid on the ground when the head of a fox sprouted from his shoulders. Afterwards I saw it recede into him. I watched him leave, and only then did I investigate the place he was in. From the outside it looked like a normal patch of grassland, but as I walked closer the place changed. There were scattered rocks everywhere, holes in the ground the size of a dragon. It was complete destruction. The beast had set up an illusion to hide its appearance in the environment. Most alarming of all was I could sense trace amounts of magic so vile I would expect to find it in Tartarus. It was faint but there. He finished his tale. That was indeed interesting. Very well, but first we will scout the prey. See him for ourselves. Understood. We will check him out with just the two of us. It is best to keep the numbers to a minimum. Understood, my lady. He smiled at that, eager at the opportunity to be alone with her. They set out to find the beast Orion spoke of, starting with the place he saw him. And you saw him destroy this place? Orion did not lie when he said complete destruction. No, only lying here, in the middle of it all I see. There is no scent left here, but massive amounts of energy litter the air here. Most of it is vile as you have described. We need to further look into this. Did you see any other person besides the beast? None. When I saw him he was already preparing to leave alone. He pointed at the direction he saw the beast walk to. He went that way, my lady, in the direction of that town. Let us go. It did not take them long after to find their target. There he is. He pointed to the center of the village square. Artemis looked and there was only a single man sitting there, so it was hard to mistake who he was talking about. There sat in the middle was the one-of-kind mop of blonde hair. The ocean blue eyes. Her whiskered friend. Are you sure? She asked, hoping Orion was mistaken. I am. I know he does not look it, but he is definitely the beast I was talking about. She looked at Naruto again. He was playing with the street children now. Lady Artemis, we can kill him now. His guard is down. Together we could take him on, he said impatiently. No, we will leave. She began to walk away. She took note of how Orion did not mind to battle an enemy in the middle of a village square with a lot of people. Sigh even now, he could hear her friend's voice nagging him to think of the people. Orion nodded and followed her on the way back to the camp. Artemis' mind was whirl. There was no mistaking the malice in the energy they checked today. That was not natural, it did not belong here, it belonged in the depths of Tartarus. And it all came from Naruto. Why did he not tell her of the fox? Is he really a fox monster? Was he truly an agent of Tartarus? Was he sent here to spy on the gods? What should she do? Give him up to Olympus for investigation? There were too many questions running through her head. Just before they reached camp, Artemis spoke. You will speak of this to no one in the hunt. You will not hunt the man. You will forget everything that happened today. What? Why? Did you not feel his true nature? He asked in confused anger. There was no monster like that thing. Hunting him down would give him satisfaction to no end. This is an order, you cannot hunt that man. His eyes flashed at that. You will not even think of him. We will go for another prey. I have decided to deal with him myself. This is not up for debate, she added. I am Orion. There is nothing I cannot hunt. Yes, my lady, he said with gritted teeth. That, however, did not stop Orion. Without fail, she would bug him daily about the blonde. You should have seen the fox. You would not be letting him free if you did, he would say. It had been a whole week and yet he did not stop. He had come back with firewood in his arms when he saw Artemis outside her tent. She was speaking to someone. Quite happily, at that. When he got closer and finally got a look at the person she was speaking to, he froze. It was the same man they sought out a week ago, the monster fox. He placed his hand on his knife, tracing it. He was ready for the blonde. The man saw him and looked like he asked Artemis something. Then Artemis looked at him and called him over. He complied, his hand ready to draw his knife as soon as possible. And who is this tall fellow? The blonde asked with a smile, towards Artemis. This one is Orion, the newest addition to the hunt, she replied coolly to the blonde. However, her eye contact was with the tall hunter, eyeing him to be quiet and not mention anything. Since when did you accept males into the hunt? He asked incredulously. Since him. Hello, it is a pleasure to meet you. Orion spoke up. His face showed a smile but his eyes spoke differently. He did not like this at all. He looked ready to jump him. Artemis did not miss the look her hunter gave the blonde. It is nice to meet you too, came the friendly reply. Go, Orion, set up the fire, I must talk with Naruto alone. She shoo-ed him away from the blonde. She gave him one last look telling him to keep quiet. Orion headed off to the rest of the hunters, dropped the firewood into storage and made his way to the lieutenant of the camp, Zoe. Do you know who the man talking to Lady Artemis is? He asked her, giving a judgmental look to the blonde. Naruto. Yeah, you'll be meeting him a lot in the future. We come across each other from time to time. He's Lady Artemis' best friend after all." A look of understanding came across his face. "I see, thank you Zoe." He ended the conversation at that. I understand," he whispered to himself. Zoe looked at him weirdly before walking away. He looked at Artemis and the man once more, where he saw Artemis showing a wide variety of emotions to the blonde. I understand," he whispered to himself. He did not miss the way Artemis' lips curled as the blonde spoke. I understand," he whispered to himself. He did not miss the way Artemis' eyes were a tad bit warmer to the blonde than to anyone else he'd seen before. I understand," he whispered to himself. He especially did not miss how Artemis did not flinch when the blonde patted her shoulder before he left. I understand," he whispered to himself. "I will save you Artemis, I will quell whatever he has poisoned your mind with." He walked in the direction of his tent. He needed arrows and his knives sharpened tonight. "And where are you off to, at this time of night?" came the voice of Artemis from behind him. "I'm off to hunt, my lady," Orion said, a tinge of delusion in his voice. "Do not do this, it will not happen you know. You cannot kill him, you will not be able to harm him," she said as a matter of fact. "I am Orion, the greatest huntsman. There is nothing I cannot kill," he objected, his bronze eyes staring determinedly at her. She took a sigh. His stubbornness will be the end of him. She watched him go into the night. "Finally found you." He was sleeping in the wild tonight, half a league away, out in the open, no cover at all. "I'll bring out the fox in you with your death, and show you to Artemis myself. Once she sees what you really are, she'll wake up from her delusion." He prepared his bow and arrow, and just as he's always done, aimed and drew back. He had 3 arrows loaded into his bow. He had done this a million times. He did not even think of it as a challenge. 3 arrows, 1 for the head, 1 for the heart, 1 for a leg. His aim was true, his strength was present, and his target was still unaware. "It would be a quick death for you. I'll make you see reason soon, Artemis." He grinned and let the arrows loose. Orion heard the sound of arrows flying through the air. He heard the sound of arrows tearing through flesh. He felt the sound of arrows tearing through flesh. Arrows were tearing through his flesh, his head, his chest. His 3 arrows were pinned to the ground by a single silver arrow. The arrows stopped just shy of his heart and brain. Artemis," he choked out, "I told you you would not be able to harm him." He groaned and rolled over in pain. "I told you I would deal with him. He is a good man, he deserves the benefit of the doubt. And until he has actually betrayed me, I will continue to trust him. I am sure he has his own reasons on why he had not told me of the fox yet. I would wait for him to tell me on his own, just as he had done with his past secrets. He would eventually tell me. Only then will I decide on what to do. But you," she trailed off. Orion shivered at the cold glare she gave him. "You decided to not listen to my orders, you did not trust my judgment even after I told you multiple times to trust me. You decided things for yourself. Worst of all you." Orion wished nothing more but death at that moment. Anything to escape the sheer fury that came from the goddess. "You claimed you would kill him in front of me." That was the last thing he heard before another arrow went through his head, another through his heart. "Did you mess with his mind?" she asked her brother. "No, I did not need to. He was already teetering on the edge of insanity even before you let him join the hunt." "So, how is the—" He paused. "Blondie," he finished, a knowing grin to his face. "I am going to kill you both." "What happened to the tall male hunter?" Naruto inquired. "Died on a hunt." She shrugged. "Hey Artemis, yeah? Hypothetically, how would the Olympians react to a man that had a giant fox spirit living in his stomach?" She gave him a soft chuckle. "Well," she started to tell him with a smile on her face, "I'll be leaving soon." Naruto told his friend. She raised an eyebrow at that. He always moved around, why did he have to announce this one to her? She motioned for him to continue. "In the East, there is a man who calls himself the Supreme Khan," she nodded. She knew of the man. It was hard not to, a truly arrogant mortal. He called himself the King of Kings, Horse Lord. A true conqueror. The man had killed millions of men in his quest for power. Once, the man had ordered to kill all men in a city that was taller than Wheel. She had lost count of the number of nations the man has conquered. Last she knew, The man's empire was already larger than the Roman Empire ever was. He was single-handedly the man with the most blood on his hands in human history. I know of him. You're going to kill him? It was her best guess. Naruto had always cared for humanity as a whole. He had always cared for the small folk. Not so much for the ruling class. She guessed he had grown tired of watching men kill each other, that he was going to put a stop to this himself. No, I won't, he replied. I am a third party. If I kill him, another will just take his place. It will just continue on and on. I can't be the one to put an end to him. Man must learn on their own. They must change on their own. Humanity cannot rely on a savior in a time like this. The change of a system will not come with the death of one man. Eventually his reign will end, his terror will end. Eventually, a better leader will come around, someone surrounded by just as good a people. That person will bring change. He took a moment to breathe before continuing. I'll be heading east to help the small folk. They're the true victims in the Khan's conquest. They're defiled, killed, their homes lost, families taken. I'm going to help as much common folk as I can. Who knows, maybe one of the people I help ends up putting an end to the Khan's empire. He chuckled. He was serious in trying to help this time. He could not help the people the gods had killed over the past millennia. But he could help these. They were victims of their own kind. Humanity has the capacity to change. He believes that truly, he can help them. That is a noble cause, she nodded approvingly. It's the least I can do. You must be careful, Naruto. Our influence is weak where you will be going. You are not truly immortal, do not let your guard down. Ah, Artemis is actually worried about me. He cooed at her like a child. His eye was smiling. Don't worry, I'll be safe. I'll visit from time to time. That was satisfactory enough for her. He was strong and careful. She had confidence he would do well on his own. Do bring me an appropriate gift when you do, she told him. My presence alone should be enough as a gift, he said smugly. Bring a real gift, she deadpanned. 1295 CE. The empire is beginning to fall. It has already fractured so much. That's good. I brought you something even better. He extended an object wrapped in cloth. It looked like a box. It weighs quite a bit too, with the way it was pulling down the cloth. What's this? She asked. It's food, from a land called Nippon. A noodle dish, named ramen. She could swear this was the most excited she had ever seen her blonde friend to be. 1407 CE. It's been a while, she greeted her friend with a smile. He did not have to tell her where he had been this time. There was only one place he could have been in. A man called Tamerlane had proclaimed himself as the great Khan's heir. His body count and conquests spoke for itself. It was the most since Genghis Khan. He backed up his talk. It has, hasn't it? He looked tired, she noted. Spend the night in camp. It has been a while since you saw the hunters. I'll ask Zoe to set up your tent. It had indeed been some time since her hunters and the sage had seen each other. Maybe 4 centuries. The newer hunters had not even seen him yet. It was the perfect time to do so. He looked like he had not rested in years. Have I ever told you sometimes your kindness surprises me? I have always been a benevolent goddess, she scoffed at him. Yeah, sure you have, he snickered at the auburn-haired woman. 1564 CE. Where have you been this time? A new continent, called the Americas. Colonizers were killing off every native they see. I'm going back there tomorrow. The colonizers are not showing any signs of slowing down. I need to help as much people escape. It was a terrible thing. He wondered if the gods were behind it. Probably not. Men could be just as cruel to their own without a god's influence. He sighed. It was just the way it is. She looked at him, prompting him to do the same. She gave a knowing smile. I went to this Nippon you spoke of. I brought ramen. Instantly, his mood brightened. 1639. I can explain, Naruto said, frantically trying to calm the goddess of the moon. She was looking at him with utter disappointment. Like he was vermin. It was unnerving him. He knew what she was thinking. It was so easy to mistake the view in front of her. I knew this was bound to happen. Artemis stood shaking her head. It was only a matter of time. She was looking down him. Did Apollo finally corrupt you? I knew I should not have let the two of you met. She kept talking, and the blonde could just feel the irritation coming from her. He had to put a stop to her. Artemis, meet Anne, a Greek demigod. Anne, say hello to Artemis. Naruto urged the young girl forward. She was a blonde, blue-eyed girl. So easy to mistake as his. He found her in the Americas being chased by hellhounds. She had nowhere else to go, her family was dead, and she was just a girl not even 10 years old. So, Naruto took her in and set out in search of Artemis. He did not know where the demigod camp was, so he had to ask her. A look of confusion, then understanding came over her face. "Why didn't you just say so immediately?" she said in a hurried whisper. Careful not to let the child hear. She had already embarrassed herself enough with her earlier tirade. "I did." He did the same. The small girl's voice cut through their whispers. Hello Lady Artemis," she greeted meekly, never letting go of Naruto's hand as she did so. Instantly, Artemis' face shifted to a face so sweet and gentle. She has millennia of experience talking with children after all. She knew just what to do and say to make her feel calm. "Hello there, little lady." She patted her head and knelt down so she did not have to tilt her head up to look at her. "You did a great job being so strong and making it all the way here." The girl's face flushed at the compliment. "How about I take you to a camp full of friends and family?" Artemis asked with a smile. Naruto was proud of his friend. 1,000 years ago, she would no doubt have invited Anne to her hunt. It was only natural for her to invite her. She lived alone, was a demigod, had no one else to turn to. But Artemis' criteria for joining the hunt had changed over time. The hunt was the absolute last option for a girl like Anne. Only when a girl has nowhere else to go will be invited to the hunt. The hunt is the last safe haven for a maiden, and it will continue to be that way. Anne still had Camp Half-Blood. She could still make a life there. And so, Artemis did not invite her. Anne nodded her head enthusiastically. Then she stopped, her little face making an "oh" expression, as if she remembered something. "Naruto promised to take me," Anne told Artemis. "And I will. I always keep my promises." Naruto grinned at her. "Okay. Let me rephrase it. How about Naruto and I take you to a camp full of friends and family?" Artemis asked again. Anne's smile was bright enough to infect even Hades. 1795 CE. It's been centuries, but it still keeps on going. She stayed silent and let her friend continue. "The only reason the killings have slowed down is because they've already killed so much. There's only so few natives left to kill for them. It's almost the 1800s, Artemis. Almost 3 centuries since I first arrived there. They're still eradicating them. I've failed to do anything good at all." She could hear the despair in his voice. There was this one group, Pequot tribe. They got into a war with the colonists in 1636. I joined the war in 1638. We were winning for a time and I actually thought we could make it out. But then a particularly harsh winter came in 1640. I couldn't do anything to help them after that. There was this one boy, I forgot his name now. He gave himself a depreciating chuckle. He went out to get some food for his sick sister one morning and never came back. A week later I saw him hanging from a tree just outside a town of colonists. There were so many victims like him. He corrected himself. It wasn't just one boy that had happened to. It was countless others. She did not know what to say to make him feel better, so she just sat and listened to his worries. "Maybe I should just kill them all." He spoke. "No," she said firmly. "Remember what you told me when you first set out for Genghis Khan's conquests. Do not forget who you are and what you believe in. Do not lose sight of yourself. But do not worry if you ever do. I will be right here to guide you back," Artemis assured him. He stared at her profile for a short bit before looking forward. "Thanks. Don't mention it. 1908 CE. Let's have dinner." He did not ask this time. He just wanted to eat and was not going to take no for an answer. Okay. She wasn't going to reject him, not when he's just come back from one of his save the people trips. That satisfied him. He could finally push back the atrocities of Leopold the asshole to the back of his mind for a bit. He was just going to focus on the dinner tonight. 1945 CE. It's finally over. He breathed out a sigh of relief. He looked over to the silver-eyed woman. "Can I camp with you guys tonight?" "Only if you bring gifts. I have the perfect gift for everyone." "Don't get ahead of yourself. I'll be the judge of that." He stuck out his tongue at her like a little kid. 1958 CE. They finally did it. Did what? They finally had the greatest leap in culinary history. "What? Instant ramen." He finished. "I brought 30. Let's eat." He was like a kid in a candy store. "I'm eating a maximum of 2. She did not want to imagine how unhealthy it must be. That was good enough for him. Not like he was planning on sharing more than 3. 2007 CE Artemis stood apart from the main group of people. Her brow was knitted, deep in thought. She's really Artemis? The goddess of the hunt? A green-eyed boy asked. Yes, Percy, she is. A gray-eyed girl responded to him. It just feels so weird to think of a little girl as a Greek god. That's just magic, they take the form of whatever they feel like, it's not their real form. I know, Annabeth. It doesn't make it less weird though. Annabeth could not help but sigh. Another girl spoke. She had short black hair and an electric blue pair of eyes. Hey, Grover. Snap out of it. You've been staring at Artemis for the past 5 minutes. She slapped her hands together towards her satyr friend's direction. She was trying to get his attention back. The satyr promptly returned to reality at her words. Though he would still sneak glances towards the goddess. You satyrs, all in love with Artemis. She rolled her eyes. You can't blame us, she's Artemis, Grover said. She's so nature. Why? He sighed dreamily. The goddess took all of their attention when she shouted, Zoe, bring me Naruto's knife. Annabeth perked up immediately upon hearing the name. Naruto? Who's that? It doesn't sound like a Greek name, Percy asked. Naruto. Blonde. Immortal. Some call him the Great Sage. Friend of Artemis. Rumored to be the one that killed the giants Otis and Ephialtes. Rumored to be the one that killed Orion. Rumored to be Artemis' secret lover. Not much is known about him. Annabeth listed off methodically and calmly. A nice, clear, and concise introduction of the man in question, as one would expect from a daughter of Athena. Secret lover. Isn't Artemis a virgin goddess? Why would she have a secret lover? It's because I don't. Naruto and I are just friends. Artemis had walked over to them. Sighing at the mortals' tendency to exaggerate their legends. She reached over the 3-pronged dagger that her lieutenant gave to her, then promptly hid it in her clothes. My brother is about to arrive, she pointed to the sky that was beginning to lighten. Close your eyes and don't open them until the light dies down. The demigods and satyrs shared a look of confusion before following her words. It was unwise to disobey a god after all. Then a light so blinding washed over them, so much so that it was still hurting their eyes even with their eyelids closed. They had to cover their eyes with their arms. The light soon died down and then they felt the temperature rise up. It was winter but they were beginning to sweat. Little sis. Came a loud male voice. That urged the demigods to finally open their eyes. It was a sandy blonde man. The ridiculously good-looking man smiled, and the demigods had to squint their eyes at the whiteness of his teeth. For the millionth time, I am the elder sibling Apollo. I am, but I'll let it slide for now. What's up? You never call. I thought the world was ending when you called for me. Stop being so dramatic. So, what's up? He frowned at his sister being a killjoy. I need a favor. I need you to take them to Camp Half-Blood. I am going on a hunt. She gestured to the group of hunters, demigods, and satyr behind her. Sure, sis. Then he raised a hand, in a stop sign. Hold up, you're going on a hunt but you want me to take the hunters to camp too? Yes. You're going alone? No, I'm going to take Naruto, she said, uneasy to tell her brother that. Her brother always got annoying whenever she brought up the whiskered blonde. She couldn't lie to escape either, so she just braced for what was coming. She could hear the excitement that was coming from her brother. He smiled and flashed those pearly white teeth that were as bright as the sun. I haven't seen him in ages. I was a bit worried you'd go hunting alone, but I feel much relieved now knowing that you're going with brother-in-law, he exclaimed. She could feel the headache forming already. Don't call him that. He's not your brother-in-law. He ignored her statement. Please tell him to come visit me soon. We're due to go on a brothers-in-law bonding trip. I don't want to deal with you any further. An exasperated sigh came from her. Why did she have to have an annoying brother? Why couldn't she just have gotten a well-mannered sister? She turned to her companions, first to the sibling demigods. Take care of your brother, Bianca. And you, Nico, take care of her as well, she reminded them. Yes, Lady Artemis. They both said to the goddess that saved them earlier. I apologize in advance for the grievances that my brother will bring. She ignored the indignant cry that came from Apollo. Be safe, and don't cause too much trouble at camp. She told the rest of the group. A chorus of affirmation came from them. She called for her lieutenant, Zoe, You are in charge of the hunters. Do well. Do as I would do. Yes, my lady. The demigods and hunters started loading into the shuttle bus behind Apollo. Apollo turned to her and spoke, "So, what is it that you're hunting that you have to call on brother-in-law?" Apollo was never going to stop calling him that. "It's none of your business." He narrowed his eyes and stared at her. "If you weren't so serious and deathly, I would have just assumed you threw the children to me so you could have some alone time with brother-in-law. Which I fully approve, of course." There was nothing more Artemis wanted in that moment than to wipe off the smirk off Apollo's face. "Another word out of your mouth and I'm putting an arrow through your balls." Apollo wisely shut up after that. "I will see you by winter solstice," she told her brother and hunters. Artemis watched them leave, then brought out the first gift she received from Naruto. It's time to finally use it. She had sent her hunters to be in Camp Half-Blood. This hunt was too dangerous, too much at stake. She needed someone more powerful, and the fewer of them hunting, the better. She needed someone she could trust. She called for him, remembering his words millennia ago on how to use the knife. Magic poured onto the knife from her. She didn't know if it would even work. The blonde came from another world. It's very likely that the knife wouldn't respond to magic from this world. Still, she had to try. She looked for an empty spot near her, a few feet from her. There she threw the knife, just as he said she should. A brief yellow flash appeared. Once it died down, her friend stood over the spot where the knife landed. He was tensed. He immediately scanned the surroundings. A quick threat assessment. He was expecting to be called in a battle. Once he ascertained the safety of the surrounding, she saw him relax. "Artemis," he called out to her. "Naruto." "What's wrong? What happened?" Naruto asked. He thought Artemis was in immediate danger, so he Hirishin ed in ready to battle. But it seems like she called him for something else. It was worrisome. It had been thousands of years since he gifted the kunai to her, but this was the first she used it. "A long time ago, you asked me to invite you when I'm going on a dangerous hunt. I remember. I need your help with this hunt." His eyes took on a serious look. "I'll be moving us to a personal space, away from the eyes and ears of everyone." She raised her eyebrow at that before nodding to let him continue. He clapped his palms together, kept them in place. He looked as if he was praying. Suddenly, writing extended from the base of Naruto's foot. It was a language Artemis did not understand. It expanded in 8 directions. One set of writing per direction. It was expanding like someone was writing them, but no one was. It was writing itself. Every line stopped when it was about 10 meters away from Naruto. It suddenly glowed and then the light covered the two of them. Artemis noted that they were now in a completely different place. They were now standing in front of a cabin. It looked like a normal cabin, but the surroundings were completely unusual. This place was empty. Utterly empty besides the cabin and the two immortals. And an endless stretch of the black floor they were standing on. "This is my very own place. It is outside the modern world. Similar to a pocket dimension. We are completely outside of anyone's domain. Here, we can guarantee to be free of unwanted eyes and ears." He took a moment to breathe. The blonde's tone was serious. Artemis never asked him for help with a hunt. She's hunted dragons, and countless other monsters, but never even looked to him for help. Whatever it was that they were going to hunt, it was dangerous. "Tell me more of the situation," he said. "First off," she started. "I need to have an idea of how strong you are. We've had spars before, but neither of us were serious." I'm not really sure. I haven't had the opportunity to test my limits since I've gained my immortality. I've been laying low from Olympus for the past few millennia. If I had gone on testing my powers and strength, I would have gotten noticed." He spoke, unsure of the extent of his power relative to this world. He's been in countless battles, but he never had to go into 6 paths sage mode. Heck, he never even had to use Kurama's chakra in a real battle. He's sparred with Artemis before in Kurama mode, but it was in a contained environment, hidden with seals, and they were going easy on each other. He would settle on his normal sage mode in every battle and would not pick fights if he had to go further than that. That was the only reason he got through all of those years without being summoned to Olympus. The strongest showing he had shown was when he fought the twin giants. He hadn't gone further than that in any fight. He hadn't even used 6 paths sage mode in the modern world. He was sure that he would be found out instantly if he did. Then would come the summoning to Olympus, then the trial on what to do with him. No seal would be able to hide that much power. The only safe space to use it in was his pocket dimension. "How strong of a power boost do you get when you enter your divine form?" he asked. "Unquantifiable." And it was true. An Olympian in their divine form was one of the strongest beings out there. He let her reply sink in, mulled in his thoughts. "So am I at my strongest mode plus Kurama. So, let's just say I'm about as strong as you," he finally replied, and smiled confidently. The problem was, he was bluffing. Naruto had a general idea of his strength in his Six Paths Sage mode. However, he had no idea how strong Artemis was in her true form. If she was weaker or stronger than her, he did not know. He did not have a measuring stick. He had some info on the god's strength simply due to the ancient stories, and if those had any basis of truth in them, then he was confident he was just as strong as some of the Olympians. The thing was, stories were just that, stories. Easily manipulated, exaggerated, underrated. The gods could easily be weaker, stronger than that. So, he had no idea how he measured up to her. He could not tell his friend that though. They had known each other for the majority of their long lifespans. Not once had she called for his aid. His friend has many flaws, some of which are still a work in progress. What is not one of her many flaws, is cowardice. She is brave, confident in her own skills. But right now, that confidence was faltering. And so, confidence and reassurance were what he would bring her. "I'm strong. I'm confident enough that I am a match for some of the Olympians." His gaze was unwavering. She met his blue eyes. She was going to put her trust in her loud-mouthed, obnoxious, constantly nagging friend and his fox spirit tenant. All right. She released a breath of relief. A weight off her shoulders. "The Ophiuchus. We're going to kill the Ophiuchus. The cow snake? Isn't that weak?" He scrunched his nose, perplexed. "On its own, yes, but we won't be the only ones looking for it. The Titans are as well." Oh, that's bad. Shit, he'll have to wake Kurama up for this. "Which of the hunters are you bringing along?" "None, I left them at Camp Half-Blood." He nodded at that, it was the safe thing to do. "I need to wake Kurama up for this. Go ahead. Kurama. Wake up." The fox demon didn't respond, deep in sleep. "Kurama." The fox's forehead crinkled. "What?" The fox grumbled, eyes still closed. "I need you to wake up." "What for?" Kurama was still grumbling, still wanting to continue to sleep. "We might need to fight." Kurama's eyes snapped open. Did he hear that right? "We're going to fight?" Kurama repeated. "Yes. Could it be? Has Naruto finally come to his senses and challenged those throne-sitting shitheads to a fight? Or had the gods decided to test his strength? Or maybe the bowwoman was in mortal danger? He had so many questions. Whatever the reason was, Kurama was grateful for it. He rarely got to use his power since they had come to this world. The handful of times Naruto did use his power was in this tiny pocket dimension he made with his seals, or when Naruto would do his maintenance exercise, to make sure his skills do not completely rust, and he only did that every few years. Which is why Kurama was asleep the majority of the time. This world had so little action in it. Hopefully, that will change soon. Who? Where? When? Not sure yet, not sure yet, not sure yet. You woke me up for a fight that may or may not happen. Irked at his expectations being dashed. Because if we do get into a fight, it will be dangerous. Kurama mode at the very least, we might even have to go Six Paths Sage mode. That perked Kurama's interest. We're going to hunt the Ophiuchus with Artemis. Harmless on its own, but the Titans will be looking for it since sacrificing it will supposedly give enough power to end the gods. The Titans are the dangerous ones. Kurama would not let this opportunity pass, they might go all out. All right, brat, I'll be on the lookout. Kurama said with a shit-eating grin, excitement clear on his face. Thanks Kurama, I'll be counting on you. Artemis saw that the blonde's eyes were no longer glazed, they're finished. Kurama's awake and on board. Good, let us begin. 2 days. They had been looking for the Ophiuchus for 2 days now. She finally had its location. Mount Whitney, California. The blonde and the goddess rushed to the mountain as fast as they possibly could while keeping their stealth. Something was terribly wrong. The Ophiuchus would have never been on a mountain on its own. Someone had brought it there. That was the reason for the rush and stealth. They needed to keep the element of surprise on whoever had the Ophiuchus. They were moving through the night, making no sound and leaving no trail. They made their way onto the summit. He was the first to see it. Head of a bull, with the long body of a snake. He took her attention when he stopped. Artemis, Naruto whispered. I found it. His blue eyes pointed to the Ophiuchus. She followed his gaze. Dead. Lifeless eyes, no breathing, nothing. What was worse was its sliced underbelly. Blood spilling onto the ground. Its entrails were taken. Let's go, no time to waste. She sprinted. Stealth be damned. He followed suit. In an instant, they were at the summit. Shit. Shit. They cursed at the same time once they saw the Titan in front of them. There was no mistaking this one, even though both Naruto and Artemis had never seen him before, they immediately knew who it was. He was clad in a blazing golden armor. His skin was the color of the sun itself. Naruto could feel the heat coming off of him even if he was 20 meters away. His eyes were a flaming gold. Hyperion, the Titan of the East, the Titan of Light. One of the strongest Titans, behind only Kronos and Atlas. And he had the entrails of the Ophiuchus in his arms. They were in deep trouble. Kurama. Naruto internally called for him. I'm on it. The fox replied. Naruto instantly entered Kurama mode. His body turned golden like Hyperion, but instead of a flaming gold body, Naruto had an orange-golden one. Chakra flames licking the air. Solid black patterns covering his stomach with a notable circle on his navel. Naruto left Artemis in the dust. There was no time to waste. He had to try and blitz Hyperion. He couldn't allow Hyperion to throw the entrails in a fire. And although there was no active fire at the moment, Hyperion could easily make one with the snap of his fingers. He is already powerful enough as he is, and if he was to sacrifice the Ophiuchus, they did not want to deal with the aftermath of that. Naruto crossed the 20-meter gap instantly. Right arm beeped back, aiming straight for the head. Massive amounts of chakra gathered in his arm. Naruto was going for a one-hit knockout. Hyperion did not notice him until he was just a meter apart from him. Hyperion's head whipped to his direction and a look of surprise etched on his face. His flaming body instantly flared. His attacker was too fast and already too close. He had no time to put his arms up to guard. Hyperion braced for impact. Hyperion flew back several meters with one punch. As soon as Hyperion's back met solid rock, 5 silver arrows immediately pinned him down. Artemis wasted no time too. Naruto immediately looked for the entrails to see if the Titan dropped it. He didn't. Naruto rushed forward again. He didn't want the Titan to have some to so much as think. They were going to force him on the defensive. Suddenly a fire appeared 2 meters to the right of the cloud of dust Hyperion was in. Shit. Naruto sped up, he could not let that happen. However, before he was able to reach him, he saw the entrails being thrown into the fire. He would not reach in time. It was a good thing his partner was very dependable. Artemis manipulated some plants to go over the fire and douse it, forcing the entrails to land on it with thud. They were lucky they were in her domain. Naruto changed his course from Hyperion to the win condition of the fight, the entrails. He just needed to get to it, then he could seal it. Naruto inwardly thanked the oddly specific prophecy of the Ophiuchus. It said, whoever threw the entrails into a fire would have the power to bring down the gods. Hyperion couldn't just light the entrails on fire on the off chance that the prophecy doesn't come true. He had to follow it to a T. Naruto was broken out of thoughts when Hyperion yelled and he got thrown several meters back by an invisible force. Tell me your name, boy. It may have been a surprise attack, but you still managed to draw some blood from me, came the bellowing voice from the flaming Titan. Whatever cut lip or bruise Naruto gave the Titan was healed by now. Naruto spat out as he picked himself up. He did now know he could do that. He had to watch out for that next time. He was back in a fighting stance and took in the sight of their enemy. His eyes darted to the entrails for a brief moment. It was still 2 meters away from the Titan. He himself was about 8 meters away. Good. At that distance he could stop Hyperion from throwing it into a fire. And you must be Artemis, he said to the direction of the goddess. It is nice to finally meet you, grandniece, he added. Artemis didn't reply and just readied herself for an attack. Naruto. I wish you good fortune on the way to Hades. Artemis, I hope sweet Leto forgives me. As soon as he finished talking he vanished in a blur of speed. Like a burning rocket heading straight at Naruto. Thankfully, Naruto was prepared and quite fast himself. He blocked the initial attack and went on to a fist fight with the Titan of Light. Naruto was at a stalemate against the Titan. But he couldn't keep this up for longer. His own regeneration can't match a Titan's. By the time he's healed an injury, Hyperion would have healed 3. The good thing was, he did not need to do much other than to match Hyperion. He just needed to keep him occupied. He could no longer feel Artemis' presence, he couldn't see her. The goddess of the hunt was impossible to detect when she wanted to. They didn't need to communicate to each other what they were going to do. Naruto would stall and Artemis would steal the entrails. Hyperion's head whipped to the direction of the entrails. His eyes glowed brighter, and then Naruto went flying once again. With a wave of his hand, a wall of flame rose around the entrails. Artemis appeared as she leapt back from the flames. Her entire right arm was burning, it got to her, tch. Thankfully, her god-tier regenerative healing powers kicked. The flames went out and her arms were healing so quick it was already as if she wasn't burned at all. All in the span of 3 seconds. And Naruto was fighting who had comparable, if not better, regenerative abilities than her. You cannot hide from me. I am Hyperion, the one who watches from above, he claimed. Kage Bunshin. Naruto created 4 clones and had them all charge Hyperion. That should keep him busy for a few seconds. He rushed towards the entrails, going as fast as he could. The fires were out so the entrails were ripe for the taking. He and Artemis shared a glance, which was enough to convey the plan. Artemis immediately backed him up and prepared to fight close combat. They switched targets. Artemis rushed towards the Titan of the East, daggers in hand. Hyperion picked up on their plan immediately. It was going to be troublesome for him. The blonde had fought him to a stalemate earlier and now the Olympian was coming for him. Strong he may be for an immortal, an Olympian is a different matter. She is most likely stronger than him and I would have to focus harder on a fight with her. I can't engage her in combat or else I'll lose the prize. Hyperion's mind was at work. Hyperion summoned a gold sword and made quick work of the clones sent towards him. As the Titan of Light, he was fast and confident in his speed. He could catch up to the blonde and evade the goddess of the moon. He dashed to the blonde and evaded the goddess' quick swipe as he went past her. He got him. Hyperion pulled back his sword arm and stabbed the blonde's back. At least, that was what was supposed to happen. At the last moment Naruto did a complete turnaround and prepared a counterattack. Hyperion could swear he saw the face of a fox full of glee sprout from the blonde's shoulder. Naruto was better than Artemis in hand-to-hand combat, and they both knew that. If Hyperion forced Naruto into a stalemate, then Artemis didn't expect to do much better than that. That's why they pretended to switch. Hyperion would want to take out the weaker one to focus on the other. If 1 versus 1 didn't work, then 2 versus 1 should. Artemis purposely let Hyperion past her and towards Naruto. Putting Hyperion in a bad spot, Naruto to his front, and Artemis to his back. It was a simple plan, but it worked. Bijudama Naruto threw the potent ball of energy to Hyperion. Hyperion tried to dodge but as he did 4 arrows buried themselves in him, rendering him still for just enough time for Naruto's attack to hit. Naruto managed to get at an angle that had Hyperion soaring back and upwards to the sky, past Artemis. The explosion came from the Bijudama and finally Naruto was able to take a breather. He hadn't used a proper Bijudama in ages and Kurama was on a high because of it. He released a second sigh of relief once he saw the entrails were unburnt. He looked for Artemis and saw her shout something at him. It's not yet over. Her scream was interrupted by a blinding white light. Blinding white light was an understatement. It was so luminous that the whole mountain was covered in a white light. It was so luminous that it was probably seen from hundreds of kilometers away. It was so luminous that Naruto wondered however would the mist hide this phenomenon. Where suddenly in the middle of the night, the sky turned so bright it was as if it was exactly noon. Naruto. Kurama called Naruto with a hurried voice. Kurama. What happened? The blonde asked why he was suddenly pulled inside his mind. You need to go 6 paths sage. Now, Naruto did not need to be told twice. There was no one he trusted more than Kurama. Whatever was happening, he needed to be at his strongest. Naruto drew on the sage's power and enveloped himself with it. He underwent his own divine transformation. Naruto went back to reality and found himself on all fours on the ground, panting. His body was healing from what looked to be burn injuries. What the hell? That flaming beeper unleashed his divine form. His mere presence was burning away my chakra cloak. You were a second or two away from disintegration. The cloak held long enough for me to pull you in and tell you to go divine as well. Kurama explained to him. He could hear the exhaustion from Kurama's voice. No doubt he supplied unimaginable amounts of chakra to his cloak for it to hold as long as it did. Holy shit, he was seconds away from death. If it wasn't for Kurama he would have died. He sat on his ass, taking a second to recover. Naruto, are you alright? He heard Artemis' voice. He held his head up to look at her. His breath hitched, and his mind went blank. Naruto, Kurama brought him back to senses. Now was not the time to be entranced by the sight of Artemis' divine form. Artemis, yeah, I'm fine. He replied. You can look at me? She asked. This was the first time she'd seen her friend in his current form. His golden cloak was more tame and no longer had flames. It looked to be more controlled. His overall look hadn't changed much besides that. He had patches of black clothing this time though. And the most prominent change was the set of pitch black orbs behind him. Yeah, I'm divine myself in this mode. He waved off her questioning look. He would explain to her next time. She extended her hand to help him up. Let's end this bright ball of a titan. He grinned at her as he took her hand. It's too late for the both of you. Hyperion's voice boomed. The blonde and the huntress looked to where Hyperion last was. They both cursed when they saw he wasn't there. They saw him with the entrails in hand, and a fire in front of him. A maniacal grin plastered on his face as he threw the Ophiuchus's entrails into the flames. Hyperion had taken advantage of the opening given by him entering his divine form. Naruto was still regaining his bearings and Artemis didn't have the speed to cover the distance. He'd gotten his wind condition. The fire grew larger and larger until it was 5 meters tall. First it was the embers going into him, then slowly, the flames were touching him. He didn't burn, the flames were being sucked into his body. Naruto threw a screeching Rasen Shuriken right at Hyperion. He was in the middle of a power-up and Naruto was not going to let him finish it. It was useless though. Hyperion just took the brunt of it in the explosion. The fire didn't go out either. He was pissed he had to settle with a Rasen Shuriken. He didn't have enough time to use something stronger. Thankfully, Artemis followed his suit. A single arrow flew. Naruto could feel the power in it. It was her strongest of the night. It went in deep and eventually through Hyperion. The pointy end sticking out of his back, the tail was on the other side. Still, Hyperion did not falter. Neither did the flames. It was still pouring into him. Until there was no fire left. Everything was consumed by the Titan of the East. Get an escape plan ready, we might need it, Naruto whispered to Artemis. Artemis nodded at that. Together they watched Hyperion furrow his eyebrows together. I don't feel any different. He mumbled, but it was loud enough for Naruto and Artemis to hear. Maybe it takes a while before it takes effect. He looked at Artemis, she was thinking the same. They nodded at each other before they pressed forward together. Naruto moved to the left, Artemis to the right. They were going to pin him. The black orbs floating his by back merged and turned into a bow staff. He swung it directly at Hyperion's head. Hyperion did not bother blocking, he was still confused at why nothing was happening. He didn't feel any stronger nor faster nor more durable. Literally nothing had changed. He took the blow from the staff head on and felt the side of his head crumbling to dust, into nothingness. The blow sent him directly towards Artemis where 100 arrows were floating all around her, all pointing at him. She let them loose at him. The ground was being destroyed as each projectile went through Hyperion. He was up in 10 seconds, though the disintegrated side of his head still had a bit to heal. He took hold of his golden sword once again and rushed towards the goddess. He clashed blades with her. With every meeting of blade and blade the ground shook. A testament to their strength. He dodged with a roll to his side once he sensed the blonde coming from up above. The resulting crater from the blonde's missed drop kick was enough for Hyperion to tell he chose while dodging instead of blocking. He flashed a bright white light that blinded the two of them for a moment. Which was enough for Hyperion to close the distance between him and the goddess. He brought his sword up and swung down. Artemis was quick to recover though, and had managed to lean back out of the way of the sword. Still, she was not able to dodge it fully as the sword still cut from the top of her left eyebrow all the way down her face until it stopped at her right cheek, at the mouth level. Ichor gushed out of the wound. It wasn't that deep of a cut since it did not even cut her eyes. She jumped back to sketch out a new plan with Naruto, taking a second to breathe. "Naruto, we need another plan," she told him. She caught him staring at her. "Focus. Naruto, snap out of it." There was a look of denial strewn across his face. She saw confusion in his eyes. Panic. Fear. Artemis, his voice was low like a whisper. "Naruto, I need you to focus." She looked at Hyperion. He was looking at her with glee. "It's not healing." Sure enough, she saw that her left side vision was still blurred by the ichor flowing out. Sacrificing the Ophiuchus did work, it just didn't give a normal power boost. It gave Hyperion the ability to kill a god. He only needed to land one fatal hit. And the goddess of the moon would forever be gone. Naruto reached his hand over to her and cupped the side of her face, where she was cut. His hand glowed, then removed it from her face. "I can't heal it either." "You're staying here," the blonde said. He didn't leave any room for arguments. "I can fight," she replied, not wanting to leave him all alone against Hyperion. They had better chances fighting him together. "I know, do it from here, at a distance. Don't even try to get close to him," he said with finality. She wiped the ichor from her face. "All right." Hyperion was done with them talking, so he took the offensive this time. Aiming straight at the goddess. He was ecstatic in the power he was given by the sacrifice. It was so much better than a strength boost or a weapon boost. Even with a strength boost, it would be hard to overpower a god's regenerative abilities. Same with a weapon boost. He'd have to depend on that weapon to kill the god. The sacrifice had given him the ability to inflict wounds on a god and negate their healing. This means that even just a well-placed, powerful punch to a god's head would be enough to kill them. He flashed a beam of light at the two to blind them, then fired a ball of fire to the goddess. He trailed behind the fireball. Even if they take out the fireball, he'd be right on top of them, in prime position to strike. The plan failed. A wall of earth stopped the fireball dead in its tracks, and the blonde came at him from three sides: left, right, up. His momentum meant that he wouldn't be able to dodge. So burst a large amount of flames from his body in defense. All three Narutos around him popped from the heat. He continued forward but was stopped when a concentrated beam of moonlight lasered through his right shoulder. His right arm fell from his side. It was no matter. He'd healed that up in seconds. He picked up his sword with his left arm and continued his assault. He fired a beam of light to destroy the wall of earth in front of him, eager to take out the goddess behind it. He didn't expect to find Naruto there. Holding a ball of energy like the one he used on him earlier, he wouldn't get hit by the same attack twice though. He was better than that. As the blonde threw the attack on him, he propelled himself up to the sky with a rocket of flames beneath his feet. He scanned the whole mountain. True to his name, he looked down on everyone from his vantage point high above the summit. He searched for Artemis. Then a larger moonbeam came from above. Its size meant that it was easy to spot, therefore dodge. Hyperion dodged it by a sliver. It was large enough that it tore through the mountain. A hole 100 meters in diameter was definitely not good for the mountain. The mountain collapsed a little. He narrowed his eyes when the black ball the blonde threw and missed exploded about 4 kilometers from where he stood. The explosion was more powerful than the one he got hit by earlier. He couldn't afford to get hit. He needed to go back to the offensive. The two's coordination was too problematic. A massive arrow, at least the length of a bus, came at him from the base of the mountain. He smirked. The goddess was getting desperate. She was compensating with bigger attacks. The arrow was fast, but the titan was faster. He dodged it. As soon as he did, the arrow violently exploded, destroying the summit and then some. Mount Whitney was a few hundred meters shorter now. He wasn't given a time to breathe. As he was thrown by the explosion, the blonde appeared before him, flying at the same speed. "We're bringing you down, oh high one." He slammed his bow staff straight down at Hyperion's chest. Hyperion felt the friction of the air against his back as he was sent to the ground. The earth cracked as Hyperion fell from 5 kilometers up. His body bounced back from the force but was immediately sent down again with an arrow from Artemis. He looked up and saw the goddess was with the blonde, in the air. This time, he was pinned on the ground. He couldn't do anything. He had taken so much damage in such a short amount of time that his healing couldn't keep up. He was still healing from Artemis' exploding arrow. Two clones appeared beside Naruto, one on each of his side. The clones went down to Hyperion, leaving the original and the goddess in the sky. The first clone slammed his hand on the ground and the earth beneath Hyperion ate his feet and arms, putting him in place. The other clone clasped his hands together, reared his head back, and spit out a large torrent of water aimed at the Titan, dousing the Titan of heat and temporarily weakening him. The temporary weakness allowed the original Naruto to land his strongest attack against the Titan. Bijudama Rasenshuriken Naruto and Artemis teleported to 20 kilometers away as soon as he threw the attack. The explosion came and Artemis couldn't help but be surprised, and a little disturbed, at the power Naruto had shown. That was definitely enough to obliterate Hyperion. They could still see the explosion from where they stood. She saw the entire mountain they fought on destroyed. Hecate will have a hard time explaining to mortals how an entire mountain disappeared overnight. The tremors finally stopped. "So, can I safely say that I'm stronger than you?" Naruto said. She stared blankly at the blonde. That was the first thing that comes out of his mouth after all of that, she sighed. "You're going to be in a lot of trouble in Olympus, her father must be having a fit right now. I suppose I can't just run from them like last time?" "No, that's fine, you'll be on my side anyway." His face showed no worry at all. She nodded. "Come, we must ascertain Hyperion's end. Let's stop the bleeding first, then let's go. Your wound is healing at the same rate as a mortal's," he noted as he put on a bandage over the wound. "The bleeding should stop in a few minutes or so. I'll take it off then." "All right. Let's go." Artemis and Naruto stood side by side in her cabin at Camp Half-Blood. It had already been a few days since they killed Hyperion. It would be a very long time before Hyperion would be able to reform, even by their immortal standards. He got off relatively easy from the Olympians as well, thanks to Artemis. His punishment wasn't that much of a punishment if you asked him. He doesn't even know why he had to be punished. He did nothing wrong and only helped Olympus, to be honest. It wasn't his fault. The gods felt entitled enough that it was his duty to disclose his powers to them. Still, everything went better than expected. "I think it's going to scar," she spoke, fingers lightly tracing the healing cut on her face. "It might, but if it will probably be a faint one. It's healing fairly well," he spoke, years of experience behind his words. "It's going to be the first look change I'll have in millennia if it does. I think it'll look good if it does scar. Keep your fetishes to yourself, please." They both shared a laugh at that. Naruto changed the topic to something he's been meaning to ask, regarding Olympus' decision with him. "I've yet to ask, why did you recommend this punishment to the rest of the gods? I don't mind at all. I like children. I like training children. I even consider this a reward, to be honest. And 100 years isn't even that long," the newest staff at Camp Half-Blood said. "It's because it is a reward. I knew you would like it, so pushed it forward. I only called it a punishment to placate father. The gods that know you know it's a reward too. It's not really a punishment," she answered him. That answer seemed to satisfy him. Artemis pondered something for a moment. "Besides, Naruto, when was the last time you gave yourself a treat?" Artemis asked. "What do you mean? For the past 1,000 years you've been traveling nonstop. I know you've been helping out those that you can. You've brought a fair share of children to Camp Half-Blood and Jupiter yourself. How many people have you saved from tyrants? Slavers? Madmen? Eventually it will still tire you out, if it hasn't already." She had to take a second to breathe. "I thought keeping you here in camp would tie you down a bit, relax you. You can still fulfill your wish to help people here. This is a new atmosphere for you. Take a breather. Occasionally you'll get some monsters, so it's not entirely boring either," she finished. "You really thought about this, didn't you?" he teased her. "You're not a god, Naruto. You've been looking out for everyone. When was the last time you took a break? When was the last time you looked out for yourself?" Artemis asked. That entire thing was a bit sudden to take in, but he felt grateful at her concern. "How about you? What did you last treat yourself with?" "About 12 years ago, I got Hephaestus to make a cookie jar that perfectly stores any cookie in. It never goes bad. It keeps it as if it was fresh from the oven. It permeates the smell too even when closed, so it always smells like freshly baked cookies." She grinned at that. It quickly became one of her most prized possessions. "Okay. Good job. Good for you, Artemis." He chuckled at her enthusiasm. His friend really had a sweet tooth. When was the last time you gave yourself a treat? What do you treat yourself with? She insisted, not forgetting the original subject. She looked at him expectantly. Naruto quieted down. She could see his mind turning. He looked outside. A content expression came over his face. Having a talk with you like this, he fixed his gaze into the forest. Sharing a meal with you. Visiting you in camp. He finished. He nodded to himself, satisfied at what he listed. Those are the treats I give myself. This time he looked her straight at her silver eyes, to show her the sincerity of his words. Artemis couldn't look at him after that. She was the first to look away, finding the forest outside to be very interesting. Then came the silence. It was only for a maximum of 5 seconds, but it felt much longer than that. She could still sense his gaze on her. Have you eaten yet? Let's have breakfast. Artemis finally said, diffusing the palpable tension. Naruto gave a small smile before looking for a clock. The clock in her cabin was still visible from their spot on the porch. 7:38 a.m. He started walking back inside. She took a moment to breathe, still trying to calm herself from the previous conversation. When she turned, she saw the blonde already by the door leading outside. He was wearing a winter coat. In his arms was another coat. It was her size, she just knew. Let's have ramen. He grinned. It's too early for ramen, you know. It's never too early for ramen. Only on the condition that I choose the place. She bargained. Deal. Bright smile on his face. She walked towards him, with a smile just as bright. Thanks for watching.